Hello, everyone, and welcome to Realizing Next-Gen AVs Are Not New. I am Kristen Hinsberger, the Senior Program Events Manager at ESET North America. Please note this is a live presentation. It is being recorded and will be available following the conclusion of the webcast. For more information on this topic, including a link to ESET's blog, welivesecurity.com, please check out the Attachments tab. If you have any questions for the presenter during the webcast, you can submit them through the Bright Talk question tab, and we will address them during the Q&A sessions. At this time, I would like to introduce our presenter, ESET's Partner Sales Engineer, Ben Reed. With 10 years of experience in both small and large organizations, Ben has quickly grown through the IT ranks. He has held several different positions in IT, including Help Desk, System Administrator, and Solutions Engineer. Ben has been at ESET for over 3 years and has immersed himself in the ESET Remote Administrator and ESET Endpoint clients, helping customers with configuration and deployment of ESET solutions. With that, I'd like to welcome Ben to the webcast, and I'm going to pass it over to him. Hello, Ben.
Hello, and thank you very much, Kristen, for that introduction. And with that, we'll go ahead and hop into the presentation. So typically, when companies first decide to look at a new antivirus company, they'll typically do a search and then start diving deeply into each company's website. And of course, on these websites, you're going to be greeted with messaging and marketing jargon. And going through here, you can actually see a direct comparison of actual AV messaging from ESET, as well as 2 next-gen antivirus vendors. And for example, ESET says we have ultra-fast scanning. One of these other vendors says evaluates in less than 100 milliseconds. Which one's better? Do you actually have any idea if an extremely low footprint is better than a low impact, or game-changing performance, or proactive threat protection, or proactive not reactive? You really don't have any idea what actually is very much better or which is the best. So ultimately, if you are comparing multiple AV vendors and looking through the marketing messaging, this ends up just being noise and unsubstantiated claims. But why are all of these things so similar? Why are all of these AV vendors talking about the exact same things? And the reason why is because they go ahead and they target the current host-based scanning pain points. The pain points of AV are typically, and always have been, heavy system impact on machines, products being reactive and not proactive. You don't want to have to go and remediate a threat. You don't want that threat ever to get on a computer. Daily update size of definitions and new versions and so forth. The hassles around deployment, needing multiple endpoints or removing your previous AV vendor when you're making a switch. And then finally, no threat remediation or complete cleaning. People don't want an antivirus that lets them know that there was a threat, but they want it to be able to clean that threat automatically without any interaction. So this is a comparison of ESET, who's now been around for 24 years, to these next-gen vendors, and they still focus on the exact same things. So when we hop into the next-gen and their technology, what are some common misconceptions? So for example, machine learning, which is what lots of these next-gen vendors flaunt, has no way to distinguish new versions of clean software from malformed versions. They can't distinguish an updater linked to a clean application from a downloader used by malware, and cannot recognize when clean software components are used for malicious purposes. And the reason why is machine learning classifiers require human experts, because of its fully automated processing, where samples that have already been classified by the system would be used as inputs to a system. A snowball effect would happen from all of the positive feedback. And for example, if you add new samples to the learning process, that may cause some false positives to occur. But then if you go and remove the data that's causing false positives, you'll then go ahead and reduce the effectiveness of true positive detection. And finally, most of these next-gen vendors rely heavily on indicators of compromise. And most next-gen vendors perceive these as a very important and are typically stressed as being the crux of next-gen AV detection. And most people have no idea what indicators of compromise even are. And this comes from the IOC bucket of April 2015 of what these indicators of compromise actually are. And as you can see, these are even more basic. When 25% of these indicators of compromise are simply the hash of a file. 13% is a file name. So when you get down to it, indicators of compromise are actually extremely basic. And these next-gen vendors dismiss obsolete signature-based detections used in old AV, and they praise IOCs so highly, even though these are actually the weakest signature-based way to detect malicious files or events. So one of the big things that we hear in the AV industry is AV is dead. This is one of the big claims that lots of these vendors like to make. And they try and lump every single AV vendor into the same bucket and make a blanket statement such as this. And we disagree. We say AV is not dead, just traditional signatures are dead. And in order to further understand that, we have to go through the evolution of malware. So signature-based is what they typically were, and to remove malware out there in the beginning, a signature was needed. It was sort of a one-to-one match. For every malware or virus out there, you needed a signature in order to remove it. This method in the beginning was very effective, but it was always a reactive approach. This method was also much more feasible in years previous, when the amount of new malware was not as large as today. And these malware have been growing at a rapid pace. And on this graph of total malware, you can't even see the amount of malware up until 2007. And we're now at a point where we're seeing about 390,000 new pieces of malware every single day. And so as this graph has grown and as malware has grown, AV vendors have had to adopt to meet this growing threat. And because of this accelerated growth of malware, we've seen more and more companies trying to jump in and try to get a piece of the antivirus or anti-malware pie. So there's been a large proliferation of self-proclaimed next-gen AV vendors calling companies that have been around for years dinosaurs. What this actually is highlighting is that they have no experience in the industry, and for some reason they think that other AV vendors have not been growing and adapting just as viruses and malware have over the years. So early on, in the very beginning, threats were on limited operating systems and only ran in very specific environments. Now these threats are actually appearing not only on any operating system, but anything that runs on code. And we're not just seeing more and more attacks on OSs like Linux, OS X, and Android, but also on connected devices and even things like routers. And a great way to actually visualize this is VirusTotal. And VirusTotal allows you to see the different files that have been submitted, including files unique to Android or Apple. And so this shows the growth of malware over the years where these different areas typically weren't exploited. And these areas weren't exploited because they didn't have as much of a foothold or a market share. Because of course, malware and virus manufacturers are going to pretty much target places where they have a high market share and can have a high penetration rate. And as more and more connected devices become part of our lives, this will create an entirely new market for malware creators to exploit. In the beginning, malware used to spread PC to PC via things like file infecting or disinfecting viruses. But now we're seeing malware and viruses come from things like email, links, web pages, documents, and macros, executed via exploits, or social engineered in many, many more ways. So malware keeps adding more and more distribution vectors day after day or month after month. And in the beginning, malware was used to be written by teenagers as pranks. A great example was in the 90s. I believe there was a virus that advertised for a free cup holder. And when you actually opened that, what it did is it opened your CD-ROM drive. So these were the kinds of viruses and malware that were typically being written. But now malware and information theft is a very big business, with hundreds of websites set up not just to buy malware, but exploits. Then there's even more websites that are set up where you can take the information that you steal and sell that information that you gain through this malware and through these exploits. We're also now seeing malware come with guarantees, 7-day return policies, and so forth, SLA contracts. It's becoming a very, very big business. And then malware now utilizes multiple programming languages. They now obfuscate their code, so now it's just not as simple as doing code analysis on a potential threat, because you won't be able to see what their code actually looks like. Malware will take clean processes and inject their malicious code directly into it. They'll bypass all file scanners by injecting the virus or malware directly into the memory, so it never actually touches the file system at all. They'll go ahead and they'll encrypt their communication to the mothership in the case of things like botnets. And then coupled with that, they'll use domain generation algorithms. So now it becomes very hard to use a blacklist to blacklist all of these IP addresses or domain names. So what does ESET do? So ESET was established in 1992. We now have over 1,000 employees worldwide. We have partners spanning 180 countries. And we have 15 offices now worldwide in all the major continents as well. ESET's claim to fame has always been from the very beginning that we do antivirus in a very, very lightweight way. And still today, we support Windows XP, OS X 10.6 and above, and so forth. And in fact, ESET no longer has any processor or memory requirements or hard drive space requirements. Because they were so low, as long as the OS would run, ESET will run perfectly fine on those machines. So our requirements are simply on the Windows side, you need either an Intel or an AMD processor, and that's it. And people start to wonder, lightweight footprint, what does that actually mean? And these are some of the metrics that we mean when we talk about lightweight footprint. Things that users will encounter on a day-to-day basis. Most of the time, users are using their browser, and that's their main focus with all of these web applications, things moving to SharePoint and so forth. Saving time is very, very important to most companies out there. It's not important to see who can calculate a hash file faster or who can encrypt a drive faster. It's about the things that an everyday user will utilize on their computer. But how much does lightweight actually matter to individual users? This is a kind of funny study, but SanDisk does this study every couple of years to illustrate the point of why speed actually matters. And 14% of users have admitted to taking frustration out on a gadget due to computer slowdown. 27% of people admitted that they've lost sleep due to a computer's performance. And on average, they determined that a user, due to computer slowdown, will lose 119 hours of time a year waiting on a slow computer. And if you had 100 employees who each lost 119 hours of time a year, at minimum wage, that's losing $86,000 a year. So now you have some context on why an AV being lightweight is so important. So the requirements are nice and all, but what does ESET's technology do? And how have we been innovating over the years and evolving with malware? So now ESET, of course, the underlying technology is inherited from an old style antivirus. But over the years, it's been greatly extended, enhanced, and it's constantly being developed to cover modern threats. We do things like behavioral hashing. We do sandboxing natively on the real CPU. So now potential threats make it really think that it's a real computer, rather than having the ability to realize that they're running in a sandbox. We do code analysis, and we also have an advanced memory scanner. Because now so many threats are going ahead and they're obfuscating their code, so we can't take a look at it. Or they're completely legitimate applications. And then 6 days down the line, 30 days down the line, it actually flips, and then it delivers its malicious payload. So the advanced memory scanner keeps up with those sorts of threats. To further see how our detection kind of works, this is kind of a flow chart that runs through our behavioral detection blocking and all of the components that go into a threat coming into a system and what's all the different things that we run through when that's occurring. So different things like exploit blocker, code exploitation, memory scanner, HIPs, and so forth. But what does the life cycle of an actual threat coming through ESET's technology actually look like? So this is an overview of what it actually looks like when a threat comes into a machine to the time that it's executed till finally it's actually removed off a machine. So the first point of this is, of course, network attack protection. What this is an extension of our firewall technology, and it improves detection of known vulnerabilities on the network level. And how it does this is by implementing detection for common vulnerabilities in the most widely used protocols, SMB, RPC, RDP. And this constitutes another important layer of protection against spreading of malware or network-conducted attacks. And of course, exploitation of vulnerabilities for when a patch hasn't been released or hasn't actually been deployed yet. Next thing that it runs through is reputation and cache. When inspecting an object, such as a file or URL, before any scanning takes place, our product checks the local cache, whether it's unique to that computer or you're using a product called ESET Share Local Cache, which basically creates a global whitelist for your entire company. We're going to check that for known malicious or whitelisted benign objects. And the reason why is this improves scanning performance. Then afterwards, our ESET LiveGRID reputation systems queried for the object reputation. So we can determine whether this object has been seen elsewhere. Maybe it's been seen in Russia or China and so forth. So this allows to increase that efficiency, enable faster sharing of malware intelligence with our customers, and also allows us to apply things like URL blacklists and preventing users from accessing sites with malicious content or phishing sites. Then we use what's called DNA signatures. These aren't your typical signatures from old-style antivirus. What we do is we go ahead and we extract the genes that are responsible for the behavior. Basically, the pattern matching used by old-school antivirus products can be bypassed easily by a simple modification of code or obfuscation techniques. However, the behavior of the objects can't be changed so easily. So DNA signatures are designed to take advantage of this principle. So we'll perform that deep analysis and extract the behavior out of that. And a single well-crafted DNA signature can actually detect tens of thousands of related malware variants and enable our antivirus software to also detect malware that we already know about or have seen before, but also brand new, previously unseen variants as well. Then exploit blocker. This adds another level of protection, but it's one step closer to the attackers. And by using a technology that's completely different from the detection techniques that focus on analyzing code itself, this will go ahead and try and stop those exploits that attackers would typically use to gain access to your computer. So what it's doing is it's monitoring typically exploited applications like browsers, document readers, email clients, Flash, Java, and many more. And instead of just aiming at particular CVE identifiers, it's actually focusing on exploitation techniques. because each exploit is an anomaly in the execution process of that application. And we look for these anomalies that suggest the presence of an exploitation technique. Advanced Memory Scanner is a unique ESET technology, which effectively addresses an issue with modern malware, which is heavy use of obfuscation or encryption. Whether checking is done by an emulator, virtual, physical sandboxing, there is no guarantee during the analysis of the malware that it will display its malicious behavior, then of course be classified as such. So Advanced Memory Scanner monitors the behavior of a malicious process and will scan it once it decloaks in memory. So this goes ahead and complements the more traditional functionality of pre-execution or on-execution proactive code analysis. Botnet protection will allow us to identify not just the communication that's occurring, but which process or module is actually responsible for that malicious communication. Then it allows us to take action on that identified object, and will sometimes even allow us to bypass that communications encryption completely. On the network side, we also use these DNA type signatures so that we can specifically target network vulnerabilities, exploit kits, and communication that's done by advanced malware as well. Cloud malware systems is one of several technologies that's based on ESET's cloud-based system, ESET LiveGRID. Samples are collected and are subjected to automatic sandboxing and behavioral analysis in the cloud, which will result in the creation of automated signatures if there were malicious characteristics confirmed. And ESET's clients will learn about these automatic detections via the LiveGRID reputation system, without the need to wait for the next signature database update. And the mechanism's turnaround time is typically under 20 minutes. But that naturally starts asking questions about the cloud. Why do we use it? What are the pitfalls of cloud-only scanners? And what do we use it for? So the reason why we use it, or one of the big reasons why we use it, is because of the whole reactive versus proactive argument. Hackers can go out there and they can purchase any antivirus they want to target off the shelf. They can turn off all of the network communication, and then they can constantly write and adjust malware and keep tweaking it until it will get past the AV's detection. However, in utilizing the cloud, you can utilize it for things like file reputation. And if we notice that this file has never been seen before, we can more heavily scrutinize it. But the downfall is you can't only utilize the cloud. Because if you only use the cloud, and there's lots of companies out there who are cloud-only based, they're extremely, extremely network heavy, sending in entire files, not only hashes, to their servers. And these servers are sometimes located in other countries. In the cases of malware and viruses, that's purpose is to steal information, time is not something you have. You don't have time to wait for files to be sent off to AV company servers while your data is actively being stolen. So you're sitting there waiting for a response back, whether your AV should block something from occurring or allowing it to run. So during that entire time, you could have been losing passwords, credit card information, and so forth. But the other problem is it's a very heavy dependence on recovery. Because there's a network latency associated with asking cloud servers whether something is good or bad, you have to be prepared to recover or roll back any malicious changes that occurred during that time frame. So don't worry about the data and credentials they already stole, just the files that they might have changed. This is typically likened to when you have a robber. Would you be perfectly fine leaving your house's doors open, allow robbers to come in, steal all of your stuff, then later say, it's okay, I have an insurance policy, I'll get all my stuff back? And that's what cloud-only scanners typically work like. So ESET will actually utilize cloud in 3 specific ways: statistics and metadata, files, and then the reputation system. The statistics allows us to determine and observe trends in malware and prioritize the development of protection technologies. Files, it allows us to do a mixture of automatic and manual processing of files. And this processing is done on both virtual and physical machines. But we also have additional processing by real people, real detection engineers. And this is crucial for assuring that you're getting the highest quality detection rate and the lowest number of false positives. And then a reputation system. We judge not just the reputation of files, but things like URLs, certificates, IP addresses as well. Then if it's something we've never seen before, we can have the endpoint more heavily scrutinize it. But typically when you start talking about this, people start to question the privacy. I don't want my files being sent to ESET. But what you can do with ESET is you can turn off the submission of files. You can turn off the submission of statistics. But you don't have to turn off LiveGRID. So you don't have to actively make our LiveGRID system better, but you can reap all of the benefits of hundreds of millions of people who are currently using ESET and have the feature turned on. Then finally, everything that I've said so far is all well and good. But if there's not a third party out there actively scrutinizing the claims that we've made today, you would just have to take my word for it. And we probably all know that every vendor out there, even next-gen vendors, are going to say they are the best. So that's why ESET participates actively in tests carried out by so many third-party testing laboratories. People like AV Comparatives, ASCII MediaWorks, AV Test, VB100s, Dennis Laboratories, and so forth. So ESET goes ahead and participates in all of these independent third-party tests month after month after month. We allow ourselves to be put out there and actively scrutinized by the AV testing company. You won't see next-gen AV companies participate in these tests because they have everything to lose by participating in them. They have a great marketing team, and people are believing their hype. But one bad third-party test, and all of those claims mean nothing because the truth has been brought out about their actual technology. A very big third party is also Virus Bulletin. And this graph goes through the Virus Bulletin awards, how many times each AV vendor has been tested by them, how many tests they've passed, and how many they've failed. And actually now, ESET has passed every single test going back since 2003. So we're now at over 10 years of consecutive passes in their testing. And as you can see, we have actually more tests passed than most AV vendors even have participated. So how do you get started with ESET? How do you get migrated over? And how do you get running and getting the best foot forward? So ESET products come pre-configured to the best practices out of the box. This means pre-configured reports, notifications, policies. Lots of our competitors do not do this, and they actually charge a large fee in order for them to help you get this set up this way. Or they leave you with a giant 1,000-page manual and ask you to read that. Of course, secretly hoping that you will call support and pay them on the back end after purchasing their product. ESET support is all United States based, and our support is open from 5 a.m. Pacific time to 7 p.m. Pacific time, and is free and included with our product. So that's why we try and make it as easy as possible for customers to deploy the software. We have all of the Windows recommended automatic exclusions already set up, so you don't have to worry about it. And then finally, how do you migrate from your current AV to ESET? Lots of next-gen AV vendors will have you believe that you can just leave your AV as it is. Don't uninstall it, don't remove it, just leave it there, install ours over the top. So that's not a great way to do it because you're going to have a performance loss. Now you have two AVs competing on the same computer. You're going to have more overhead, more requirements to keep things up to date so that users don't get annoying pop-ups that will create help desk issues. And you won't just get these pop-ups from things like the AV, but Windows OSs and the Action Center will also give you these pop-ups. So ESET created something called Rip and Replace. And what this is it's a custom-built package for your environment. It comes with 2 hours of a sales engineer's time, but what this does is it will completely rip out any antivirus on the market. It doesn't matter if that antivirus told you they have the best self-protection in the world. It doesn't matter if they have host intrusion protection system. It doesn't matter if it's password protected. We will completely rip out that antivirus. We will install ESET, have it connecting into your management server. We'll do so in typically about 4 minutes. There are no reboots at all throughout this entire process. And the best part is we guarantee this to work 100% of the time. So now it's a single package that you deploy, and you're done. You're switched from one AV to another. And then you don't have to worry about these sorts of things popping up on your users' computers. And then them calling in and complaining. You get started off ready to go properly. So takeaways. Next-gen AV is not actually a next generation or a brand new product. It really is just next generation of marketing. They see an opening to market a product a certain way, and that's what they're doing. Third-party testing is a necessity for any security product because it allows you to be openly scrutinized and gives credibility to the claims that you make as a security company. Because without this, everything is just marketing and everything is just noise. You have to realize the total cost for deployment and configuration. How long will it take you? How many man-hours will it take you to remove your current AV and install a new one? Is the solution configured out of to the best practices out of the box? Are exclusions already set up in there, or do you have to do all that manually? So you have to consider the entire process from start to finish. And always, we like to stress any prospect to do a proper evaluation of software. What I mean by this is typically when companies are testing a new antivirus, they'll go ahead and install the AV only on the IT department's computers. And if during that test period, that AV detects at least one virus, that means that it must be working. But the problem with this is that IT typically has the newest computers out there. You don't know how often you would have gotten a virus with another AV vendor. So what you should actually do is you should go ahead and install the AV on the oldest computer you can find. Install it on the user's computer who gets a virus once a week. Install it on the user's computer who is constantly asking IT questions and isn't really the best with computers. And definitely make sure you install it on all OSs that you have. So this will give you a full picture into what the new AV solution will be like if you actually move forward to deploy that software on a wide scale. And with that, thank you very much, and that concludes my presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. There was a lot of great information packed into this presentation. As a reminder to the audience, we're going to get started here with the Q&A very soon, so please enter any questions you have in there. And also, for more information on this topic, ESET products, free business trial links, and social media links, please look at the attachments tab on the top. And Ben, I see that we have a bunch of questions coming in now, so I'm going to hand this presentation back over to you. I see a bunch of questions in there.
All right, perfect. So it looks like first question, do you recommend a second product like Malware Bytes and on top of other AV? So at least when it comes to ESET, ESET has the ability to block anything that's malicious. That's what we're looking at first. So viruses, malware, we're looking for anything that's malicious. If you want to go ahead and protect against even further things, what we call them as is potentially unwanted applications. In lots of instances, these are things that Malwarebytes was known for removing. Toolbars, coupon printers, and so forth. So ESET can go ahead and you can enable ESET to detect those potentially unwanted applications as well. So we'll detect, block, and remove them as well. You can also enable ESET to detect potentially suspicious applications, which will utilize our file reputation for applications that typically aren't seen very often. Then you can also enable it to detect what's called potentially unwanted applications, which those are things that are typically perfectly fine for an IT administrator to use, but not fine for anyone else to utilize. So things like vulnerability detection software, IP scanners, and so forth. So ESET has the ability to detect all of these different things rather than just typical only viruses, only malware. We will cover the entire gamut. So you were asking about next-gen AV vendors like Code Black and Falcon and Cylance. Yes, you didn't see them in a list of the comparisons of AVs. And the reason why is they don't actively participate in any of the third parties that I talked about. They don't open their products up to be scrutinized by these third-party vendors like Virus Bulletin and AV Comparatives. They haven't allowed themselves to be tested. And in fact, lots of these companies don't even offer trials of their software. You try and request a trial, and they become very, very difficult. They tell you that, no, there's no trials. You just have to believe us that it works, give us your money, and then we have a 7-day return policy. So they're out there. They just don't open themselves up to that third-party testing. So you either have to believe their marketing or you believe third-party testing when you talk about actual claims and how well it actually works. Does ESET provide protection for mobile devices? So on the mobile side of things, yes, we have a product that runs on Android. And of course, the core component is detection of viruses on Android. And I showed that graph a little bit earlier in the presentation from VirusTotal. And it will show you the amount of malware that is Android specific on any given day. And so we have a product that runs on Android, and not only does it protect against viruses, it also gives you MDM type features. So from our single management server, you can manage all ESET products, such as Android. On the iOS side, because Apple doesn't allow the scanning of the file system to anyone, no one has the ability to scan the file system because Apple doesn't allow that permission. So no one has a product on the iOS side that will go ahead and actually prevent viruses from occurring. On the iOS side, what we will do is we'll tie directly into those device profiles so you can manage iOS devices directly from the ESET management server as well as all of the different OSs. What platforms does ESET support? So ESET supports basically every platform out there. So we go ahead and we will support Windows, Linux, Mac, Android. You can manage iOS devices directly from your management server. And we're extremely backwards compatible. You can still run the newest version of ESET on Windows XP, Service Pack 2, very old OS X versions, Linux versions, and so forth. And of course, we support Android and iOS. We actually have full feature parity between our Windows and Mac products as well. So your Mac users won't be left out in the cold when it comes to specific features. And all of those products, no matter the OS out there, we go ahead and we will all be managed from a single management server. And that management server can be installed on Windows, it can be installed on Linux, and we have a virtual appliance that you could import in rather than installing anything at all. Do other vendors have rip and replace? No. I have not yet to run into a vendor that has rip and replace. Most other vendors, what they have is something that they typically dub AV remover or AV uninstaller or something like that. And typically what that is that's a free tool that they give away. And typically what it is, it's a OEM'd product. ESET actually OEMs a free version as well. and ours is called AV Remover. And typically what it's used for is it's used for home products. It's not used to counteract business products or password-protected products or products with self-defense or host intrusion protection system. And most AV vendors, if you dive deeper into their uninstallation process, they will show you which products they actually support or work with. And if you go through there, they always require reboots. They always require you to disable certain features so that you can deploy it. Rip and replace, we custom tailor to your environment the AVs that you have, and then we guarantee it to work because we test it in our environment first and make sure it will work. And typically that turnaround is 24 hours. So you can go ahead, you purchase ESET, in 24 hours you're delivered your MSI, you deploy it, and then you're done. You've switched completely over. Does ESET offer discovery on the network? Yes. So not only will ESET go ahead and pull in all of the computers in Active Directory if you're on an Active Directory environment, but we'll also go ahead and pull in those computers via network scan. So we will go ahead and we'll scan your subnets looking for unprotected computers. And if you want, you can have it automatically install the software on that computer if it's unprotected. Keep in mind, one thing that you want to know is some people will go and they'll enable or set that feature up. And what they don't realize is they have lots of people coming in from other businesses and connecting to their Wi-Fi. So you want to make sure if you have that feature enabled, you're not allowing it to be scanning that public Wi-Fi that you have in your office. Or you're going to be installing ESET on people's computers that maybe it shouldn't have been. What are the pros and cons of the ERA virtual appliance versus Windows Server? So the pros are, it's easy to set up. You download the appliance, you import it into whatever hypervisor you have, and you're done. The cons are, if you don't know anything about Linux, it's Linux-based. So the appliance is Linux-based. Typically, you wouldn't have to know how to do anything in that Linux OS because all of our management is done via a web browser. But if you don't have great familiarity with Linux, I definitely recommend either going the virtual appliance route or the Windows route, not the Linux route. How important is encryption? Encryption is becoming more and more of a priority. Encryption is becoming a very big thing, especially for these compliance type environments. So ESET actually offers encryption. We've partnered with a company called Deslock. And what that actually allows us to do is that allows us to keep the resources separate. So Deslock has their own team, and they keep working on encryption rather than us taking focus away from our core business, which is antivirus. So we have an encryption product, yes, and encryption is definitely important and is becoming more and more important every single day. Is ESET available for Exchange servers? Yes. So not only do we have the products that I mentioned before, we also have products specific to Exchange. So it will tie directly into your Exchange server. It will be able to scan those mailboxes, not just for viruses, but for spam as well. It will also be scanning at the transport layer to stop any inbound traffic and redirect those emails as they're coming in. We also have products that tie directly into SharePoint, so that malicious content can't be uploaded into your SharePoint server either. Can we talk a little bit more about third-party testing? So true third-party testing laboratories are people like Virus Bulletin, AV Comparatives, Dennis Laboratories. Those companies are the three biggest in the AV testing realm. There are people out there who will review antivirus. Just any internet website will review an antivirus. But typically, those types of sites are pay to play. You pay them some money, you send them some free software, and they write good things about your product. Companies like AV Comparatives and Virus Bulletin, they test every single antivirus on the market. If you don't see the antivirus vendor that you're about to purchase or you currently use, it's because they've asked that AV vendor to stop testing them. And the reason why they do that is typically they'll do very poorly in the test, and they know they'll do very poorly, or they no longer have anything to lose. Well, I'm sorry, they have so much to lose. So if you're the market leader in antivirus, participating in a third party can only hurt you. You're already the market leader. You don't need a third party saying that your product doesn't work very well. But AV Comparators and Virus Bulletin will test every single AV out there and give you the results about how each product does. And what you need to focus on as well is the history of third-party testing. They do these tests every single month. 1 month, ESET might not be first. The next month, we might be. The next month, we might be third. But we've been participating in these tests going back since the very beginning of these third parties. So you're opening yourselves to be scrutinized, because 1 month we could do really poorly. And that would, yes, look bad on us. But we keep updating our product to make sure that we won't do poorly. How can ESET maintain its light footprint going forward? So already we've maintained this exact same light footprint going back for 22 years. And we continue to maintain that light footprint by making sure that our kernel is written in lower level coding languages, because we want it to be as lightweight as possible. And what we also don't want to do is we don't want to go the route of purchasing up company after company after company and integrating every single feature possible into the endpoint. Now, if you don't want encryption, too bad. You have hard drive space utilized on your machine. We don't want that to happen. We want to keep it antivirus focused. Then if you want encryption, that will be a separate add-in, and then you have encryption. So the people that only want the core antivirus will still get the same low footprint that they expect. We don't want to bundle everything together, then just disable features. So heuristics has been around for a very long time. ESET's been using heuristics since the very beginning. They've been around 20 years or so. And it really, even though it's called heuristics, basically it's behavioral analysis. Rather than saying you're the exact thing that we know is malicious, it's saying we're looking for malicious behavior. We're looking for things like, are you editing the registry in this sort of way? Are you deleting system files in this sort of way? Are you trying to encrypt all of my files? And so forth. So we're actually looking at behaviors, and we've been doing this from the very beginning because we've seen the growth of malware over the years. Lots of other AV vendors actually use heuristics as well. Lots of the people that have been called dinosaurs use heuristics. Just some AV vendors use heuristics more than others. Some companies do 50% heuristics, 50% signatures. Some people, when they've turned on or just started doing heuristics, have caused problems on machines because their heuristics engine was detecting clean processes as malicious. But we've been doing this from the very beginning. So we've been using heuristics. This isn't some new feature that we just introduced 2 years ago or 5 years ago. We've been doing this from the very beginning. So what does IOC stand for? IOC stands for Indicator of Compromise. This is what most next-gen vendors flaunt as how they're protecting computers in this new way, when in fact indicators of compromise are hashes of files or just simply the file name. So a hash of a file is a file's unique signature, basically. So when an indicator of compromise is being utilized, it's basically the exact same thing that AV vendors were doing 25 years ago, except they have a new nice name for it, and that's what they're calling it to make people think that it's more important. Indicators of compromise can be great for forensics, but it's not very good for detection because it's just that one-to-one matching still. For every hash out there or every file name out there, you want a signature in order to look at it and remove it. What do you think the most important feature of ESET AV is? I think it's the detection. It all comes down to the detection. So being able to do that behavioral analysis, being able to do the on-computer sandboxing, being able to do all of this without having to use things like the cloud. Yes, we can use the cloud to make our protection even better, but we don't have to use it if we don't want to. So ESET gives you that great flexibility and the agility to be able to roll out ESET exactly as you want in your organization. If I want to use a trial version, won't rip and replace, remove my existing AV? Yes. So that's why we don't go ahead and we do not give you rip and replace as a trial. Because we guarantee rip and replace to work after purchase, that's when we deliver it to you. Typically to try things out, we don't give out trials of rip and replace. So you would have to just go uninstall your current AV and install ESET. And that's typically what we recommend, because ESET really won't even install if you have another AV there most of the time. Because what tends to happen is if you have more than one AV on a computer and a new threat comes into your computer, or you go to a malicious website, who gets to look at that file first? Does AV1 get a look at it first, then AV2? Or does AV2 get a look at it first, then AV1? And if AV1 looks at it first, they're going to lock that file until they decide what to do with it. And while that file was locked, it could go ahead and infect your computer. So if you have more than one AV on a computer, they're going to be fighting, and they're not going to work as efficient as they need to. So when you're testing the product, it's best to uninstall whatever AV you have and install your new AV so that you don't run into those different things. Yes, ESET will go ahead and do HTTP scanning by default. HTTPS, we really don't do much on the HTTPS side, and the reason why is we don't believe in typically breaking security for the sake of security. So if you're doing HTTPS scanning, you're basically doing man-in-the-middle attacks. So you are creating a fake signature, fake certificate, so that when you go ahead and you go to a website, it looks like it's going to your computer, but it's not. It's going to your AV. So ESET doesn't like doing HTTPS scanning because of that fact. In order to do it, you have to break security to give you security, which doesn't make sense to us. Yes, we can go ahead and do HTTPS scanning, but it is not turned on by default. Only HTTP scanning is turned on by default. What firewall ports need to exist between the endpoints and the management server? The only firewall port that's required between the endpoints and the management server is one port, a single port. And that port by default is 2222, 4 twos. That's the only port that's required to do all of the features associated with our management server. That's logging, that's reporting, that is the ability to install and uninstall software, running remote command line commands. We can do all of that over that single port. How does ESET handle managing endpoints that are not physically located on the organization's network? So you can do it a couple different ways. If you want to be able to manage those computers remotely, you just have to open up that single port in your firewall. Or if you're a smaller shop and you don't have a firewall, the router or modem that you were given from your ISP, you can go in there and open up the single port, that port 2222. Once you open up that, all communication between the ESET endpoints and the management server is done securely with certificates. And so now, no matter where those computers are, even if they're at Starbucks, even if they're at their house, you'll be able to get the notifications, alerts, and you'll also be able to do those other features that I mentioned, like install and uninstall software as well. So it gives you that flexibility to be able to manage computers no matter where they are, and very, very simply as well, because it's just one port, rather than lots of other companies where it's 10, 15, 20 ports that are required in order to do this. Does the product have a management console where I can see all of my clients' PCs and servers on ESET? Yes. So yeah, we have our management server will be able to see every single computer, no matter the OS, no matter if it's a server or desktop, no matter if it's a mobile device. And from that management server, you can go ahead and you can manage all of them, put their policies in place and so forth. You can uninstall and install software. You can view even more information about computers, like running processes and registry keys and event logs directly from there. And our encryption console, will show the status of the encrypted devices as well. So you can see when it was encrypted, what date it was encrypted. And the big thing about ESET's encryption product is the fact that it can be managed completely over the internet without the need to open a single firewall port for the encryption piece to work. So now if someone loses a laptop and they're at the airport, you can press one button that will remotely wipe their computer, And what's going to happen is the second that computer gets internet back, the formatting will occur. We'll remove their encryption keys, and they will be unable to log into the machine. And we'll actually blue screen the machine just in case they were still logged in as well. And the reason why we do that is because it simplifies the encryption protection process. Because as we probably know, it's great and all that your computer's encrypted, but if you go ahead and someone loses the laptop and someone finds it, chances are they're not going to connect back to your VPN, and they're not going to bring your laptop back to your office. So you would have no way to make sure that that data was actually protected or formatted or safe. But DESLock, because the only requirement is an internet connection, it allows you to remotely wipe that machine as long as it has internet or the second it gets internet. And lots of people will utilize this for termination of employees, not even for the encryption part of it. The encryption's a bonus. But when they terminate a remote employee, they can go ahead, format their machine, will lock them out of their machine, reboot the computer, they're unable to log in anymore, and now you can call them on the phone and terminate them. Is encryption full disk encryption? Yeah, so we offer both full disk encryption, we offer file and folder encryption, and we also offer USB-based encryption. And the USB-based encryption, you can do it file level, folder level, full disk as well. But the one nice feature is that we can also, on the flash drive side of things, is we can keep home data at home and work data at work. What I mean by that is if you have a flash drive and you copy music and movies to it, bring it into work and plug it into a work computer, we will create an encrypted folder on that drive and mount it as the root. So now users won't be able to see those music and movies they brought from home. They can copy their work files to it and bring it to any work computer. Then if they take that flash drive home, those work files they won't be able to see anymore. They'll be able to see their music and movies again. So we try and make things as easy and as seamless as possible for users in all the different products that we work with. So now work stuff will stay at work and home stuff will stay at home. And yes, it works with machines with multiple Windows profiles. You could have 100 different users logging into the same machine as well. Do you foresee moving the management server as a cloud-based solution? Definitely. But as of now, because it's so easy to get started with a cloud-based server, people don't realize how easy it is. We actually have some knowledge base articles that are being created, and we have some that are already created. Our management server runs in the lowest tier you can purchase from any of the cloud providers, whether it's Amazon, Google, or Azure. And typically, it costs on average about $7 a month, when lots of these vendors out there charge you a lot extra for a cloud-based management server. And then you really don't have much control over it. So you can go ahead, purchase a virtual server from any of the cloud vendors, and we have a guide on how to get that running. But basically, the install process is the exact same. It just requires you to go ahead and spend that $7 or $8 a month from whatever vendor you decide to choose.
And Ben, we're actually running out of time, unfortunately. I know there's so many great questions in here. So if we didn't get to your question, we will make sure to follow up with you after the fact. And again, thank you all for your presentation in today's webcast. And also thank you to Ben, of course. That was great. We had a bunch of questions in there. We hope that you found it valuable. As a reminder, you can rate this webcast, or you can share it through your social media channels in your Bright Talk window. And again, for more information on ESET endpoint security products, you can go to the Attachments tab. Thank you very much, and that concludes our webcast for the day.